Okay, Natasha. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first webinar of the day. We've got a great little treat for you with Candice McKay, hairdresser extraordinaire. Is it hairdresser or hairstylist, Candice?
Officially a hairdresser, because hairstylists are actually only people who cut hair. Hairdressers do both.
Okay, right. Well, I've always wondered, now I've learned. So bonus for me. Great, thank you for that. Candice obviously has a salon in Stanley, and my dog is whining away at the moment. I don't know if you can hear her in the background. Shush. So maybe I'll hand over to you and mute my microphone and go and sort the dog out.
Oh, we'll bring him to say hi.
Yeah, fine. Okay, thank you, Candice. Please do take over. And just, sorry, briefly, please, in the chat, do use the chat area to say hi. We always like to see people waving at us. And, oh, bless her. And if you have questions, please use the Q&A area, which you'll see the tab at the bottom of your screen. That way your questions don't get lost in any chat that we might have. So thank you. Over to you, Candice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wow. I'd first like to thank you guys for inviting me to do this webinar. My name is Candice McKay. I used to be Candice White-Minter before. Causes some confusion, but I got married. And I have a hair salon at 44 Stanley, and we have been running for 13 years. I started my career and my competition career, that's kind of what I'm best known for, is competitions and collection work. I started my competition career actually through entering the EOHCB competitions that was always hosted at amazing things like Salon International. And I did my very first competition 2 weeks into my apprenticeship. I just learned to blow dry and was a little overly ambitious and decided, why not enter cut and color as well? And then my first year, I actually won, and that gave me a bug, an absolute bug of education, and I became completely obsessed with entering the competition. So I've been entering competitions ever since I was 17. Now at 41, if you guys need any guidance when it comes to competition work, please just send me a direct message and I will gladly help you. My position at the moment, I'm on the artistic team for Davines International. There's 10 of us, and we are the core educators that go out and do the artistic team training. We do two things. We teach the artistic director's collection, and then we put together our own collections, our each personal collection. Yeah, so let me show you guys a little video of some of the work that I've done. Let me just go to share my screen. Cool. So that was a little bit of some of the work that I've done. Yeah, my work has actually been changing over the years. Like my first couple of collections that I did was very graphic and very aggressive. And I kind of got that out of my system. And now I actually try to do far more editorial work. And that's where my interest in trends came in. So let me go to my PowerPoint and we can start talking a bit about trends. So for hairdressers, it's actually it's so important for us to actually be able not only to understand trends, but we should be able to predict trends as well. You know, and what is a trend? Oops, sorry, for some strange reason, my slide doesn't want to move. Hold on. Ah, there we go. So what is a trend? So a trend can be anything that people adopt. So it can be a meme, it can be a viral video, catchphrases, and any kind of design trend. A trend is an idea, an activity, a philosophy, or an action that is constantly changing over time. So brands that keep up with trends evolve as the market does. And this is why it's so important for us as hairdressers to always have our finger on the pulse when it comes to trends, because it will always keep us relevant. But who makes these trends? Well, people do. You know, trends are a reflection of psychology, and people are inclined to follow others. That doesn't mean we're sheep. It just means that, you know, socially, we all like to move together. Trends are influenced by the world at large. Everything from lifestyle, health, COVID, and the economy influences trends. In the fashion world, historically, trends were dictated by luxury fashion houses, and particularly their runway shows. But now consumers are hungry for more content and more product because they're online. So street style and online are now the major influences that have taken away from the runways. So if we look at it historically, we had the highbrow of society because of their you know, the economic position, the economic strength. They were the people that were acquiring a lot more things, and they tend to, their spending habits tend to be on more sort of form and quality, where your sort of lower economic groups, they tend to spend, like they go for more mass and more popularity, and they tend to go for more things that are more sort of quantity over quality. But these things are changing now. The entire world is changing. So how does a trend develop? Okay, well, trends happen in cycles. Innovators that we often see and hear are often in their sort of 30s to 50s. But these innovators have a particular affinity for an earlier period. People become very nostalgic, and they often go back to these periods of their earlier life. And this often influences them when they're putting new trends into circulation. These innovators were youthful consumers from one generation, become of age, and ultimately become creators of culture. Now, the thing is, you have to remember that trends and culture go hand in hand. That as our culture evolves, the trends evolve with them. And trends are basically the sort of the identifying sort of parts of culture. So basically, this is the cycle of innovation and emulation. There's a very famous hairdresser, I'm sure you guys know, Guido Paolo. He was quoted saying that when he was young during the punk movement, he always seemed to add an element of punk into all of his work. And Tim Hartley, who was the creative director of Vidal Sassoon for 25 years and of Davines for 10 years, he often references the 80s in his current work with models inspired by the icons of his youth. So often what happens with innovators is, like I said before, they get very nostalgic and they start bringing back sort of stuff that they really enjoyed when they were younger. So first of all, how do trends really break up? We first have our innovators, and the innovators are responsible for bringing an idea to life. They are the first people to think about these ideas, and they account for 2.5% of the population. From there, we get the early adopters of these, the early adopters. These people have huge influence, and they're about 13.5% of our society. These are people who beat to their own drum and drive the idea from the innovators to reality. Then you get the early majority. These are your early adopters. They're a third of the population. They're fans of the early adopters, and when they cotton on to a trend, they form the masses, and this is when a trend becomes mainstream. Now you're probably thinking to yourself right now, like, "Ooh, where do I fit into this?" So then when the trend is in its last part of its life cycle, the late majority starts following, and they're more hesitant when they're adopting a trend, and they first observe the trend and then jump in. And then finally, right at the death of a trend, you get the laggards. This is 16% of the population. They're the last to follow a trend, and now the trend is dead. When they adopt this trend, it has become a norm. So there's a very big difference between a trend and a norm. So why do people follow trends? Like I said before, we're not just sheep. It's a way for us to embrace and interact with one another. People are obsessed with trends because it makes them feel more connected to a group. You feel like you're in, as if you belong. That's why we have so many different kinds of subcultures with their particular different kinds of music that they listen to and ways of dressing and ways of identifying themselves, because it's a very easy way to identify someone similar to you, and that makes you feel comfortable and you become part of that trend and you actually follow that kind of subculture. So what does the world around us emulate with trends? So trends is not just what we're wearing. It really isn't. Like, I'm not just talking about fashion or what we're wearing. It's a reflection of a society at a specific point in time. Take the World Wars, for example. During these world wars, there were rations, but there was rations for everything. There was rations on food, and there was rations where on how your houses were made, how your clothes were made, and etc. What happened with these rations is that you were only allowed to use a certain amount of fabric to make clothes. And if you look at the period just before the World War, everything was quite ornate and there were lots of fabric that were used. Now, all of a sudden, they're now putting limits onto the amount of fabric that you're allowed to use. So that was the first time that design became functional and functionality became a norm. And one of the innovators of this was Chanel. Coco Chanel was made famous because of the design issues that the rations imposed. So Chanel was very smart with the outlook. With no additional embellishments allowed on the garments, Chanel decided to use the necessary button zips and pipe linings on a garment to use them in an interesting detail by using them in contrasting colors and fabrics. So basically, she looked at what she was allowed to work with and put a design flip on it. So if we have a look here, so you can see like a very minimal fabric is being used. So we've got a pencil skirt happening here. We have these pockets, that's functional. But have a look how smart she was. She changed the color of the cuff. She put a different color fabric just around the pocket. She's got the lining on the outside, and she covered the buttons. This statement we can see today. Still today, if you look at Chanel's last collection, we had parts of this trend still happening. This trend changed everything, where sort of functionality came into clothing. Okay. From the fashion from the World War were a great example how trends developed around social and economic factors. And it's so important for hairdressers for us to actually be following the news and have a broad understanding of the world. Because if we have a broad understanding of the world, we're able to predict trends. So during the wars, women's bodies changed. They were far more petite. You know, the food was rationed. They were far more petite. They were under a lot of stress. Everything changed. I mean, you know, we went from wearing corsets to joining the workforce where you couldn't wear a corset, otherwise you'd be fainting all the time. So the entire silhouette of women changed. The hemlines were much shorter, and women for the first time were wearing trousers. And one of the things that also happened is that women historically always had very long hair that was then sort of, you know, wound and put up into these elaborate up styles. And for the first time, women needed to cut their hair short because they were working in factories and the hair could actually be caught. We had the world famous Veronica Lake, and actually this is probably not the best photograph of her. Veronica Lake was unbelievably fashion conscious, and she had the most beautiful finger waves I think anyone sees. She used to do these dry finger waves, and her hair was just sort of below her shoulders to about here. And I mean, I think so many clients have brought in these very famous pictures of Veronica Lake for their weddings. The government was actually approached her studio, and they insisted that she cut her hair because she used to cover up one eye and have these magnificent waves. And so many women that were working in the factories were actually following her style, and she was forced to cut her hair short. And this is the hairstyle that they went for because they believed that this would be the safest. And yeah, I mean, that changed the whole shape of hair for that time. For the first time, clothing became more casual, and at the same time, clothing was influenced by the military uniforms. After the war, everything's changed. Okay, the economy needed to be stimulated, and how they wanted to stimulate this was through mass consumption. Okay, so we had designers like Christian Dior, and Christian Dior brought out something called the new look, because the entire silhouette of someone, oh, so sorry, the entire, can I have a tissue? Sorry, guys. Oh, this time of year, you get like a slight little sniffle from like the temperature changing. Sorry about that. So I was talking about Christian Dior. So basically what was happening is Christian Dior was changing the entire silhouette of women. Women had left the war being super skinny. They were quite flat chested. They had no hips. They were very, very petite and very slim. And what he decided to do is he decided to bring out the female form. And from this moment, the entire idea of the hourglass figure and everything that we see as being a very attractive, very sort of female childbearing form started because of his shape that he did. And he was using a lot of fabric to make the circle dress and a hell of a lot of embellishments. And that was this is the very first thing. I was very lucky. I was in London a few years ago, and I think it was 2 years ago, and I got to see this this exhibition. And this, I mean, this actually came out in 1948. This look, I have never in my life seen tailoring as good as that. It was just too beautiful to see. So we also have something called the hemline index. Okay. This theory suggests that hemlines on women rise along with the stock prices. In good economies, we get things such as the miniskirts, as seen in the 1920s and 1960s. In poor economies, we, as shown by the 1929 Wall Street crash, the hemlines drop almost overnight. And it's, I mean, this graph is quite amazing to see it going up and down, up and down. So I have a feeling we are going to be wearing slightly longer hemlines for a while. So how do you predict a trend? I've told you sort of like who influences the trends and how the trends go from the influencers to the early adopters and then eventually dies out and becomes a norm. But how do we predict them? So first of all, you need to understand what the current trend and what climate it was created in. So you're going to look at what's happening in culture and society, what's happening in politics, what's happening, you know, within the economy, what's happening with sort of world health. Those are things that you need to first of all understand. Then you can start by researching all of the runway shows. Okay, they are usually, well, I say usually because things are going to change with COVID. I'll explain in a few more slides. They're usually featured 6 months ahead of time. Okay, they're an entire season before, and you need to then look at all the runway pictures, and then you need to make sense of what patterns you see emerging. So you're going to go through, look at all of them and start sort of making Pinterest boards and putting them together in these different kinds of patterns. From there, you need to see what the people in fashion are, the people at the fashion show are wearing. Okay. Now this is a good idea because the current street style is of the early adopters. Then you need to see what is currently in the high street stores. Look at all three categories and look at those common themes. Okay. From now, you have the common themes. For each theme, try and see what the exaggeration of this trend would be. Okay. So you got the common themes. What would be the wildest, most exaggerated version of this theme? Then you'll be looking at the anti-trend, okay? Because you always have people that take that step further and other people who go, oh, I don't want to look like them. So they'll do the anti-trend. All design either progresses forward with the trends or swings right around in the opposite direction. For instance, for some time now, we've seen like these longer textured, and they're calling it like the French girl fringes. So what would be this progression of the trend? Obviously, between seasons, like hair works a little bit differently, guys, because hair can only grow so fast, and we need to keep that in mind. The progression of this trend may be more of the hair being added to the fringe, so even thicker fringes, maybe coming like right from the crown, creating like a page boy. Or it could be the anti-trend, which is no fringes at all, or even going to sort of like little tiny micro bangs. I think we'll be seeing quite a few micro bangs because of COVID, because we're having clients who are cutting their own fringes, and we know that they can go a little short. So remember that street people that are actually developing styles of their own on the street also influence it. It's not just coming from our luxury fashion houses. Okay. So how do you become an innovator and predict trends? Innovators are always their own vision. There are people who are completely aware of what's happening around them. They are sensitive to the ebb and flow of the collective consciousness, and they take an interest in the world and people. This is why it's important not only just to be interested in your own industry. Trend predicting is changing. Our connection to design and popular culture, pop culture, has become more visual. Digital media means that we now live in a primarily visual culture where young demographics, where young demographics consume images rather than words. So questions of taste, personal style, and presentation have come to the forefront. This online world has accelerated the adoption of the trends, and the longevity of these trends have shortened. Social media spreads ideas and visuals very rapidly, and the FOMO, the fear of missing out, has never been felt more strongly. People are now more receptive to what others are doing, and they're becoming very anxious and they're feeling left out. So, how will COVID affect the fashion trends? Well, I don't know if any of you guys have given any thought to how COVID-19 would affect the trends. But for instance, the world's luxury fashion houses won't be showcasing their next collections for next season. All of the fashion weeks have been cancelled. It will take some time for the economies throughout the entire world to recover. Many of us have been working from home and in isolation. And how will this affect and how will we connect to the world after this crisis? The environment has recovered hugely with regards to population during pollution during lockdown. How will this influence our future? Left out of you there, sorry. And when this is all over and we need to try and re-enter life as we know it, how would it will change? And how do we want it to change? So my predictions for these trends are like this. The first trend that I see is something that I am calling spirit. These are people that have been stuck in isolation and had well, I think all of us, just 2 seconds. Can you ask Doris to please keep it down? Thank you. So it's this trend called spirit. So these are people that have been stuck in isolation for all this time and been feeling incredibly isolated and really missing human interaction. So they are bored with the four walls that they are seeing and they're wanting to connect a lot more. They're having almost like a spiritual awakening. With this, we've had a lot of focus on our own countries and our own culture, because not only is this a global epidemic, but I mean, for most of us, we have been checking the stats on like the world, but also checking our own stats. And what will become a highlight in fashion is tradition and folk. So we're going to be having people embracing their sort of traditional wear, and their traditional way of making things is also going to become huge. Like if you have a look at this, where this is maybe taken from the Native Americans, and we've got these kind of tassels, we're going to be seeing stuff like that. If you had to sort of look at some of this embroidery over here, this embroidery has come from Portugal, and it's a whole artisanal way of making something. When it comes to spirit, the spirit trend, everything is about lots of texture, lots and lots of color, and the stuff is often artisanally made or handmade, and lots of pieces that are maybe sort of from secondhand stores or things that we have inherited. So tradition is going to be huge. Our next thing that we're going to be seeing is we're going to be seeing tons of people wanting to go to festivals. As soon as things open up normally, so maybe only once we get a vaccine, we're going to have people wanting to travel all over the world, but they want to travel and connect with people at the same time. So we're going to be seeing like the Holy Color festivals in India might actually happen one day in New York. We're going to sort of have people wanting to attend, you know, big things like Coachella, but also in a more spiritual way. So people are going to want to go to sort of the, you know, the Thai light festivals. So the whole idea of connecting people, culture, and spirituality is what happens in this trend. Then it's going to be all about retreats. People are going to be into wellness, and they're going to be wanting to really connect with themselves and connect with nature. So retreats and well-being is going to be a massive, massive trend. People are going to be going on retreats. Maybe if you're in Joburg, it'll be just a retreat in Magaliesburg for the weekend. And those that can afford to are going to be wanting to go to places like India, Bali, Thailand to attend these retreats. We're also going to have tons of online retreats, and we'll be able to connect to gurus throughout the world. But this retreat is not just a sort of a consciousness within these kind of people, it's also going to affect the clothing that they're going to wear. So we're going to be seeing sort of more kind of retreat wear coming in. We're also going to be seeing trends with, because of the retreats, because people are going to want to learn to meditate and stuff like that. We'll be seeing sort of lots of beaded work, sort of like Buddha beads, prayer beads, those kind of things are going to come in. Then with this trend, everything's about artisanal, and this is really important for the world economy at the moment because we need to support local. So you need to be supporting your local designers. You need to be supporting people that are making things themselves, things that are not coming from like afar. So artisanal is going to be huge. A lot of people have lost their jobs. They say that about 50% of our economy in South Africa will be affected, and people we may lose up to 50% of our jobs in South Africa. But with that, and this is the wonderful thing about being South African, is that we have an incredible spirit of being entrepreneurs. People are going to be making stuff. We're going to have tons of markets that are going to pop up. We're going to have people sort of sewing things, connecting, you know, old fabrics to make amazing quilts. And artisanal is going to be key. People are also going to feel more of a connection to buy something that has been made by somebody else that is local to support their community. So this is going to be a key. I mean, aren't the colors just amazing in this trend? I think it's going to be quite cool. Then we got something called the hippie hybrid. So the hippie hybrid is a combo of the hippie sort of free love and being more sort of spiritually aware and consuming a lot. It's a really interesting combo because these people have been trapped in isolation, and now when they break out, they want to spend, they want to party, and they want to celebrate life. Okay, so like some of the trends that we're going to be seeing, these were like the, you know, the prayer beads. That's going to be like very, it's going to become actually very chic. You're going to see prayer beads made in like rose quartz, in jade, in maybe sort of stones, semi-precious stones that some people believe have, you know, certain abilities to influence your life. Also, lots and lots of crystals. People are going to be layering crystals, lots of stuff. And we're going to have also this, you know, both of these kind of feel like they're from a flea market or they're artisanal. People are going to be layering these rings. You might be thinking, like, you know what, Candice, we've been seeing this trend for a while. And one of the things that that's going to happen with COVID is that we've basically got the exaggeration of two major trends because no new clothes are actually going to be produced very quickly. Okay. Then we've got the idea of holistic living. Within the holistic living, it's all about living local, eating local, supporting local, and having less of an environmental impact in the world. So we're going to have more farmers markets. People are going to sort of, you know, be seen with their big shoppers because they're not going to be wanting to use plastic bags. They're going to want to choose eco-conscious solutions. So they wouldn't mind spending more on a dress like this if it's made from hemp or an organic cotton that is coming from an ethical source. So because people have become more aware of how the world has done better without us. As in lockdown, there's less pollution and nature is really recovering. And this has made people very aware of the terrible impact that humans have on our environment. And people are going to want to live a life with less of an environmental impact. And you can see how holistic living and sort of the retreat trend are going to work hand in hand. The spirit trend is a very eclectic trend. They're going to celebrate culture. And I'm so tired of people saying, oh, cultural appropriation. How we're going to be seeing this trend and how people are going to be adopting this trend is that it's going to be cultural appreciation. So they're going to be taking sort of aspects all together, and they're going to be sort of like completely combining stuff. So you're going to be combining a jacket that you had 10 years ago with, you know, your granny's skirt. You know, you're going to be mixing and matching. You can see it's completely eclectic. We started seeing these trends originally with Gucci. Gucci created this eclectic trend about 18 months ago. We started seeing it. And then their very last trend, very last season that they did was completely 70s. But it is still the 70s eclectic kind of look. I like to see it as like a city bird of paradise. Just lots of color and a whole, you know, mixing of lots of different textures and colors. Then we get the minimalists. So basically the trends are split up into the two. First we get spirit, and then we get minimalists. So these are the people that have been sitting in isolation. And I mean, and everybody's been thinking a lot and processing a lot about their lives. So whether it's the spirit people who can't wait to get back out there and want to celebrate life, to the minimalists who have been looking at their lives and going, I can actually live with a lot less. I need less. I don't need everything that I have. You know, for instance, my husband and I, we live in a double-story loft, and we've been living on our top floor mainly. We've hardly gone downstairs. I mean, it looks pristine. It is completely spotlessly clean because we haven't been living down there. We cook and we come back upstairs. And we've realized that, you know, our dream of one day selling up and actually going to live on a boat is something that we can definitely do because we could become minimalists. We need far, far, far less. So the thing for the minimalists are going to be less is more. And this is something, if you guys are have followed Sassoon, that was actually one of Vidal Sassoon's famous quotes. And he was quoting the Bauhaus about less is more. And the thing with the minimalist form always has to follow function. So you're not going to get not terrible, but I mean lots of embellishments. Okay. Our minimalist trend, let me just go back to this, is even though they're minimalists, they won't mind spending money so long as the thing is going to last. So something like a very classic Burberry trench coat, which is 40,000 Rand, they wouldn't mind buying because it is so classic that they can, you know, buy this coat at 20 years old and still be wearing it when they're 80. So for them, it's going to be about something that is very classic, that follows beautiful lines, but also will be able to, it's a luxury that'll last really, really well. So it can't be things that are disposable in any way. So it's a luxury that lasts. They're also going to be living more sustainably. That is going to be huge for them. So they are going to buy a cashmere sweater, which is very expensive, but for them, that cashmere would have to come from a completely ethical source. You know, organic cotton. We're going to be seeing if they have any patterns in their, and they're going to have very few sort of texture, very little patterns in their clothes. We'll be seeing patterns from nature, for like beautiful pansy shells and stuff like that. And lots of translucency will be quite big as well. A big key for the minimalists is being neutral, because neutral tones you're able to mix together very easily. And they're going to be, and I mean, we started seeing this for quite a while now, but now it's going to be even bigger. So I went to Lee Edelkoort. She's a trend analyst. I went to one of her talks about 2 years ago, and she had already predicted that brown was going to replace black, and brown was going to be a major trend for the next 10 years, so for the next 8, because it was a few years ago that I saw her. And we could see that coming through, brown's coming through for the very first time with this introduction of the beiges coming through. So this is going to be really big. Then we have the whole monochromatic. So we're going from people wearing lots of the neutrals to the monochromatic. So monochromatic, I'm meaning sort of black and white, or maybe sort of small little aspects of gray going into it. Okay, this hairstyle here is going to be huge. At the same time, the minimalists with hair, they're going to be, you know, wash and wear and those kind of things. The t-shirt is going to be huge, but it's going to be a t-shirt that fits you well, that lasts, and that is coming from a sustainable, ethical source. Then we're going to have little aspects with their trends where they're going for something that is a very sort of classic and beautiful form, but with a little twist. So if we have a look at the sweater here, okay, it's just a sweater, but then you look how it's made, you know, that's slightly asymmetrical, it's oversized, and the shoulder is dropped completely, and it's creating like a different shape. So shape is a big thing. So they're doing something classic, something very simple, but with a twist. So if you have to look at historically, sort of go and have a look at Comme des Garçons from the 90s, late 80s, 90s, okay? Yamamoto, when he was the designer there, you'd see that. And that's taking influence from Japanese traditional wear, which can be very functional once it's kind of broken down, and you see it there. So, you know, oversized, but incredible shape. So functionality always with a twist. So, I mean, have a look. This is a beautiful classic blouse, but the buttons have been removed and we just have a closure up there. So it's something familiar. It's something very classic, but it's got that little bit of a difference. So a beautiful blouse again, but with a sheer aspect to it. So functionality with a twist. A lot of us have not put trousers on forever. So, I mean, I did a live, I put trousers on. It was so uncomfortable. I couldn't, I was actually teaching so people could see what pants I was wearing. I was so incredibly uncomfortable. So the trend of leggings is still going to be in there for a long time. People are not going to give them up. And that's where we have the athleisure trend. And this is combining, and the minimalists are going to do this a lot, where you get with the spirit trend, it's going to be sort of yoga pants, but in like crazy colors and etc. The minimalists are going to have that athletic look, but they're going to combine it in a more sophisticated way. So, you know, have a look at this girl. She's got her trainers. She's got, they're not leggings, but they're sort of very narrow, very, you know, trousers, very simple shirt, but she's wearing it with the blazer, and she's wearing it with the damn expensive heritage bag. You know, same here. You know, she's got like the trainers on, same trainers happening in both pictures there actually, but she's wearing it with the trench coat and then a, that I believe is a Christian Dior bag. So it's that kind of look. And they've got like a slight rockiness to it as well. You'll see it also coming through with a cropped biker jacket. Okay. The blouse. The return of the blouse. And the reason that I talk about the return of the blouse, for a lot of people, they're not going to be going to the office as often. A lot of people are going to have work from home jobs from now on, because businesses have realized that they don't need to have these huge office spaces, and they don't need to actually pay to have their staff come every day. That a lot of people would actually take a pay break to a pay cut to actually work from home because they don't have to spend the time in traffic. They don't have to now spend time paying for public transport or for, you know, owning a car. So the reason the blouse is going to be a huge trend is because a lot of people are going to want to look professional at work whilst doing these Zoom presentations. So if you're just seeing the blouse, everything looks much smarter. So the blouse is going to be huge. Thank you. So that's my presentation for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you an opportunity to think about things. I mean, I might be completely wrong. I mean, I do pride myself in trend predictions, and I have a feeling this is where we're going to be going. But I would love to hear from you guys what you think the trends would be and how things would be changing. So let's see if we've got anything in the Q&A.
No Q&A, but go on, give us some chat, people.
So let's have a look.
So super informative. Who's going to predict a trend? Anybody? Looking into beading, says.
Looking into beading, yeah. I don't know if you guys saw it a while ago. There was a trend that Angelo Seminara first did for Vogue, where he took embroidery thread and he actually threaded the hair to create a tapestry in the hair. We might be seeing more of that in the avant-garde work, and also like beading. Beading is going to be huge. Somebody's saying, Erica, hello, Erica. Erica's saying she loves the eclectic trend. That makes sense, Erica. I can actually see you liking that trend. Yeah, I mean, we're going to have huge changes in the world. And I think it's actually going to be very exciting, because I think the main thing about, if we look at the collective consciousness, even though we're going to have like this big divide in what people think, I think between both categories, people are going to make more conscious decisions. And that for me, I think is key, you know, and if we could just get the big people in charge to also sort of be in line with this, I think we can make big changes in the world.
Big people in charge, yes. Jana has asked, what about hair trends?
So hair trends, you have to, I mean, yeah, so when it comes to hair trends, you have to once again think about what the exaggeration of the trends are, and also what the anti-trend would be. So for instance, say for instance, I'm your client and I arrive, I'm usually a full head bleach, and I do a full head bleach every 6 weeks, and yeah, every 6 weeks, and then I tone. So I've now got a giant regrowth. So one of the things that we're going to have to do going back into the salon is that, first of all, we're not doing colors. We're virtually doing color corrections on every single client, because if you had to do my bleach over here, what would happen is that I'd end up with hot roots and a lovely orangey yellow panel coming through, because the regrowth is now so big, you almost have to do a virgin application to create even color. So we're going to have to come up with unique techniques to counteract these things. So say, you know, if I was my client, I'd be looking at things and I'd say, you know what, Candice, do you still want to come in every 6 weeks? Does this fit in with your budget? Does it fit in with your new lifestyle? Because we have the opportunity to either touch up your roots or the opportunity to change your color. Maybe we want to, you know, maybe you want to now start having more of a natural look, but this we can do by doing this and this and this. So that's taking the trend. So we've got the trend of balayage, okay, which is already, which has been in for actually since the recession actually started, the balayage, which for me was I hated it at first, I must say. Not because I didn't enjoy the technique, but because my clients weren't returning as often as I would like them to. So basically the exaggeration of my trend would maybe be to push the balayage and push the regrowth, and maybe sort of, for me, go in and just highlight, do lots of highlights around the hairline, do a sort of semi-permanent gloss of an ash, and then just lightly do sort of 2 balayage panels through the top. So we're going to have clients that are going to be working in 2 ways. We're going to have clients that are going to want to spend money, and they're going to want to bleach their hair every 6 weeks because they missed it and they don't ever want to be without it. And then we're going to have the other people who are going to think, gosh, what happens if lockdown happens again? You know, maybe I'm going to need to come up with more of a sustainable hairstyle. And these are things that we need to think of. Like I've been putting together, I've got about 5 different coloring techniques, which is going to be very, very fast in the salon. Not because I want to get my clients in and out, but because we may be in a situation where if we have a client for an extended period of time, we're exposed to the virus much longer. So these are clients who we could maybe go in and create an effect of like a full head of highlights with 10 to 15 foils. So we're going to have to think a little bit smarter when it comes to the trends. We're also, I mean, long hair is going to be the biggest thing because people have grown their hair longer. We've also, I mean, I've got tons of clients that have been saying to me, Candice, when I come back, I want your hairstyle because your hairstyle has looked the same through the whole of lockdown. Because for me, I'm a wash and wear kind of girl. Like I don't blow dry my hair. GHD asked me to do a tutorial doing my own hair, and I mean, like, I can show you how to diffuse it. That's as far as I go. So we're going to be having stuff like people coming up with easy solutions, and either wanting a lot done to their hair, or they're going to go for very easygoing hair. Those are the 2 things. Sorry, I'm not too sure. Someone's asking me, what do I think the role of technology is going to be in hair care? Apps, Uber of hair. I mean, if you, are you thinking sort of something that's got to do with sort of mobile hairdressers? I think I've seen a lot in the UK, people are not returning back to their salons. They're wanting to go mobile. For me personally, until Corona is completely controlled, I would prefer, I definitely wouldn't go mobile, because I can't control that environment. When people come into my salon, I have controlled that hygiene and that sanitation so that I can make sure that the virus doesn't spread. If I'm going into somebody else's home, they've touched every surface. I'm not saying people are dirty, but I'm saying the spread of the virus can go that much further within a home. It's also, I've never been a fan of mobile because it's a very difficult to keep that professional distance when you're doing mobile. You know, I worked as a technician for a few years, and I had some clients that I had from my previous salon that I adored, that I didn't want to give up. And I used to go to their homes, and all of a sudden I was charging them less than what I charged in the salon. You know, there's something about sitting at somebody's dining room table and them offering you a biscuit, you know, a biscuit and a cup of tea that changes the professionalism, you know. And sometimes I would arrive there and they would say, I forgot to draw money, I'm so sorry, and then pay me 6 weeks later. So I think we need to be very careful about how we do it, you know. With the role of technology, like in my salon, we set up WhatsApp for Business, which is on our Telkom landline number, which is amazing. And what we're going to be doing is we use Yoko in the salon as our point of sale. And we're going to go completely contactless. So in other words, the stylist will pick up the iPad, send the client a link from Yoko to their phone, and all they do is click on the link and they make the payment. So there is no chance that anybody's going to be holding our devices other than our stylist. So that's the way of technology. I think a lot of people are looking into using sort of booking systems, maybe like Booksy and other kind of stuff. I believe that Booksy was one of the most downloaded apps during lockdown. So yeah, that's going to be pretty interesting. I think because people have a lot less money, they might consider retrenching their receptionists and doing something like Booksy, unfortunately. So When it comes to that, you find with people dirty hair, especially when you stated you don't wash hair, time consuming. I mean, just when it comes to Corona, guys, every single client needs to have their hair washed. Also, if you're out walking, don't touch other people's pets, because the virus can actually live on hair for quite a while. So when we do return, just make sure. I mean, I had a client the week before lockdown who was insisting that I give her a dry cut because she was scared of my basins. But we cannot allow that to happen, because the virus can actually stay alive. They believe in hair for 3 days. So yeah, I've had a few situations. I've got 2 very cute poodles, and people, if I take them for a walk, always want to touch them. And these poodles have never had so many bathroom washes ever from me. I keep on having to wash them after people have touched them. Yeah. So yeah.
We've got a question in the Q&A.
Yay.
Candice, men's grooming.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. So we've been doing barbering in our salon for 13 years. And this for me, I find very intimate at the moment. In our salon, we won't be offering it, but we are going to be offering grooming kits and grooming tutorials. So we're going to be teaching our clients how to do it. Yeah, I think, yeah, once again, I mean, the beards were, you know, such a big trend, you know, 10, 12 years ago with the start of the hipsters, you know, that the beards got longer and longer. But we had quite a few people that did have big beards that were actually getting rid of their beards because of Corona. So we're going to see people doing 2 things. So first of all, we're going to have the clients who were going to work every day and shaving every day. They maybe not going to have, you know, a video conference call. They're going to be an audio. They're going to have a bit of stubble. And then we're going to have the people that have very sort of big beards who are going to go much shorter, things that are more manageable at home. So we're going to have to adapt. When it comes to men, one of the exciting things that I'm super excited, because for the last 3 years, I've been saying to my clients, like, do you really want to fade? You know, this has been a trend for a while now, you know, every guy's got it. You can even get a fade from, you know, for $30 from the barber now, you know, like, you know, are you sure you want this? You know, don't you think we should maybe start preparing you for the new trends? And I did a collection that was released last year, which was all 70s, and it was a hair that was all much longer. And I think now we've actually given the clients, well, what lockdown has done is given the clients to have the opportunity to actually go past that ugly stage when shaved hair is actually growing out. And we're going to be going to something that's far more 90s. One of the first times that we saw minimalist trends was in the 90s with people like Jill Sanders and Calvin Klein. And that 90s aesthetic was already coming back, you know, 2 years ago, but it's going to accentuate it even more. So like when it comes to men's hair, we're going to be looking at like the longer Hugh Grant floppy hair, Keanu Reeves, middle partings, you know, those kind of things. If you look at a reference of Christian Bale's hair in like American Psycho, big one as well. So for some reason, like I remember the very beginning, I mean, the trend wasn't even called a fade. We were just saying, shall we just go really short? No one had coined the term yet. And I had clients who had cuts and they're like, oh, Candice, I don't think it's professional enough for work. Oh my goodness, you know, it's too short, work's gonna freak out. And then it, you know, like I explained with the trends, you know, goes from the innovators and then it sort of comes down, and now sort of every Joe and his cat wants a fade. And what was happening then is that it went from being very scary for people because people were saying, I can't have hair that's that short, it's not professional, to now people believe it is the professional look. So when trends get adopted by the masses, it becomes acceptable. So what will happen is, I mean, obviously previously longer hair was seen as more professional. You know, I'm really hoping this is a time that we'll have much longer hair. I'm excited for the barbering world because a lot of people became barbers very quickly. And these are people who didn't necessarily study hairdressing. So they're very sort of clipper dependent. And because of these trends, I really am excited for the barbering world because I think that their skills will get even bigger, because we're going to be doing things like round layering through the whole head. We're going to be creating really beautiful shapes in men's hair. And, you know, when men's hair is that little bit longer, it's far more complementary. It's very difficult and virtually impossible to complement somebody's face when you're just taking it super, super short. You know, we've got so many more opportunities to actually create, to make our clients look more handsome when it comes to men. So I hope that answers a little.
Yeah, so it'll take more than a haircut for me, but
I think lockdown has finally just broken that addiction to, like, you know, a half going into a one on the sides, because, you know, it's difficult length to grow out. So
yeah. Okay, good stuff. I've really enjoyed listening to what you've got to say. I mean, things like the wellness and the festivals and other things you've referenced. I used to love going to live events, you know, and obviously with our expos, we produce live events.
Yeah.
And I look forward to being able to do that again. You know, we are social people, and you know, as a species, we need that interactivity. Yeah.
And then obviously there are going to be people that go in between the trends as well, you know.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to a trend, if you have to do something that's authentic to you. If you're doing something just because it's a trend, it doesn't suit you. It really doesn't. It doesn't suit who you are and the people that maybe you fit with and identify with. So just make sure that, I know I've only presented kind of two main trends, but just make sure that you're always authentic. I think it's important.
Adapting to your own personality and the way you are, isn't it, really? But yeah, great stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
your time. And Candice McKay, I must get that pronunciation correct for the next time. But thank you very much, Candice. We hopefully won't be in this situation for much longer, let's hope.
Yeah.
And although I think social distancing and face masks will be with us for a while. But there we go. Never mind. But thank you for your time. And there we go. Look, wow, that was great, says Erica. Yeah, lots of positivity out there. So great stuff. Thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And you guys are doing some great stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Cheers.
Bye now. Bye.